Good morning, everyone. This is Michael, and we are working this morning with the idea of the soul of nations and with the destiny of the nations. It's interesting that this word destiny is so often used in relation to the monad, the very essence of any life. Now, so far we don't have that kind of opportunity given in relation to the nations, and hardly in relation to the human being. Maybe just a few it is relevant. But it's quite enough for us to think about the role of the best qualities of any nation in bringing forward the best qualities of humanity. It's obvious that the human kingdom is in a crisis right now. We expect that that would be the case. An analogy is that before the first initiation of the human being, the two first-rate planets, or two of them anyway, Pluto and Vulcan, become very active. And the individual goes through a lot of stress, a lot of relinquishment, a lot of purification. Now that's precisely what is happening at this time for the whole of the human race and for the nations. Let us say they are the intermediaries between the individual and the soul of humanity. So what will be our role in this? Because we do have a role. We are being trained as students of esotericism, whether we have been members of the Arcane School or of the School for Esoteric Studies or of the Moria Federation, University of the Seven Rays. There are various esoteric schools which are conveying to us what the hierarchy thinks we have to know about the truth of what's really happening behind the scenes. We have so many childish estimations about what reality is. And once we begin to learn more about what's really happening, we begin to take our role in the new group of world servers, and at least as a man or woman of goodwill. And that can make a very big difference during the next 5 years before the conclave. We expect the forces of obstruction to throw everything they've got at humanity, to prevent the proper entry into the age of Aquarius. I think there's no way to avoid this. The reappearance of the Christ is inevitable, but it can be delayed. And in a way, there is no advantage to such a delay. There are many disadvantages for the manner in which humanity will enter the Aquarian age if the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ are delayed. So we have to take this, I would say, very seriously. We listen carefully to what the Tibetan has said here, and he's told us about various nations, certainly not all, because this was written, some 75 years ago or even more, and so much has changed. Colonialism has been largely withdrawn, and not completely, of course, but it has, many new nations have emerged in their own right, and they have gifts of excellence to give to the general situation when it comes to the soul of humanity. Now, what we've been doing is looking at some of the various nations. We've covered the United States. We've covered Great Britain. We have not yet worked with France. We've, mentioned certain things from what the Tibetan has said. We're working with Italy right now. These were prominent nations at the time, and they still are. And I'm sure that the Tibetan will have lots to say about China when he begins to write again, because this is a powerful emerging nation. Here and there he says other things, but does not give the complete picture. He will tell us maybe the astrological signs of some of the smaller but still prominent nations, but not the rays and the signs. Now, in the case of the United Kingdom, France, Italy, the United States, Russia, and so forth, he does also give the rays as well as the prominent signs. So let's take a look at this. We've come up to the point where we are dealing with the let's see, what is it here? Yeah, we are dealing with the secondary influences. The prominent influences are the Leo sun, with which rules the soul of Italy, and the Sagittarius personality. And then he's talked about Rome in relation to Taurus and Leo. Then I don't know if these being in this particular order are significant. I think that we can find that the soul ray and personality ray are equally significant to the signs which rule the soul and personality. Italy is in a way the heir to the ancient Roman Empire, and well, there have been difficulties with certain of the nations as a kind of Leo energy that the lords of materialism can use, work through that particular energy. Through Italy, in earlier days, through France, certainly through the Roman Empire, and as I've said before, we have with Germany a powerful Aries, let us say, and in addition to Aries, we had the dictator there with a very prominent Leo in his inner chart, the Tibetan says. It's interesting, he says, I haven't studied the actual outer horoscope of Hitler, but inwardly he has that prominence of Leo. So this is a great sign of humanity, and maybe it's considered the most human of all the signs, but it can also lead through exaggerated egotism to a condition that can be used by the selfish forces, the forces of obstruction. So right here before us we have maybe the main energies, and we have the rulers of Leo, the sun on 3 levels, and Sagittarius, personality. Notice a lot of fire in both the soul and personality, Jupiter, Earth, and Mars. There's been, the brilliance of Italy in the Renaissance, but at the same time there has been an inquisition and a counter-reformation, where the Catholic Church and the Protestantism have fought a battle. Now, basically, the Catholic Church has won that battle in terms of Italy, at least. However, there have been many modifications of late, and a lot of humanitarianism has come into the picture. This was all after what DK has written. The appearance of John the 23rd, and now the appearance of Pope Francis, other more conservative popes. And remember, the Catholic Church is interestingly ruled by the first ray in its soul nature, and by the, he tells us, the manipulative third ray in its personality. Now, what's interesting is that the advanced school of the Mahachohan, which emphasizes the third ray, will be found in Italy. And that's quite different from the rays that are presented as the soul and personality, and the signs that are presented as soul and personality. Yeah. All right. So now here are the indirect influences, ray influences of an indirect nature coming through the planetary rulers. Well, okay, ray 2. Why is that? Because of Jupiter's rulership of Sagittarius. Love wisdom via the Sun and Jupiter. And apparently the Sun is veiling a non-sacred second-ray planet. We don't know what it is, just the way the Moon is veiling a non-sacred fourth-ray planet. But suffice it to say, from both planets which rule the heart center of the human being, and I really shouldn't call the Sun a planet, you know, it's just one of those conventions in astrology, but from both Sun and Jupiter with their prominent second ray, the love wisdom comes in. And then what's always interesting is this kind of science of international relations. Now, it'll become much more complex as we move along, because there are many more nations to deal with than at the time this was written. So because of this indirect influence of the second ray, the love-wisdom ray, it relates Italy to the second ray soul of Great Britain, you see. The rays are the same. In other words, there's a secondary second ray coming in via two prominent rulers, but we can immediately draw a line to the second ray soul of what he calls Great Britain. I sometimes do differentiate there between Ireland, and I do think that Northern Ireland will eventually no longer be under the rays of Britain per se. It has its own configuration, I would say. But just what that is, I'm sure the sixth ray and fourth ray are prominent, but he hasn't really given that to us. What he has given to us is a soul on the sign Virgo and a personality on the sign Pisces. So there's a basic understanding, he says, because through this second ray between Italy and Great Britain, I would here point out that in this second ray influence, and this is interesting, it is the wisdom aspect, you know, it's a dual ray, love, wisdom. It is the wisdom aspect more than the love aspect, which is dominant. Love is, in reality, understanding wisdom in active expression. You know, every once in a while, he'll drop a really important idea into the mix, and it won't be where you expect to find it. He gives quite a number of definitions of love, and this is an interesting one. Love is, in reality, understanding wisdom in active expression. Okay, now what about the third ray? As I've mentioned, the ray of the Catholic Church in its personality is the third ray, and the school, an advanced school, one day to appear, will be on the third ray. And he calls the Italian group a highly intelligent group. I think he also says the same of Spain. So ray 3, active intelligence via the earth. Why the earth? Because, as we see, the earth is the esoteric ruler of Sagittarius, the personality sign. Now, when you're trying to do the chart of the individual, I've often said that these collections of energies and how he discusses them in the Destiny of the Nations gives a very good blueprint, a very good pattern of how we can discuss the individual as well. Let's just say, if a person has the sun in Aries, well, okay, there's a lot of first ray coming through that as a constellation, but secondary influences would accord with the rulers of Aries, sixth ray Mars, fourth ray Mercury, and seventh ray Uranus. They would have to be considered indirect and significant. And it would be, I think, incorrect to try to interpret a chart of an individual without using this method to get a broader view of the energies involved. Okay, so active intelligence via the Earth. Notice that the Earth being a non-sacred planet, its personality is very important, and the personality ray of the Earth is the third ray. It was this Earth influence which in the past gave Italy her world dominion, and which swayed the Italian personality towards the thought of another worldwide empire, I suppose, under Mussolini and the fascists who tried to reawaken the glory that was Rome. And there we have also the road builder. I carve the paths when we think about Rome, and we think about Taurus as being very prominent for Rome, and the very close relation of the Earth to Taurus. He says it's a special relationship in the book Esoteric Astrology. Okay, world dominion. Even though it is, notice he's not bringing in yet the soul ray of Earth, which would be the second ray, because it's not strong enough yet to be really a significant influence as a secondary influence. Now, ray 6 is so prominent in relation to Italy. It is the soul ray, and it is majorly coming through Sagittarius. The constellation itself is the major sixth ray constellation, and then the final ruler, the hierarchical ruler, is sixth ray Mars, probably Mars being the personality, having the sixth ray personality. Devotion and idealism via Mars. Oh, he's going to, all right. I would remind you that the soul ray of Italy is also the sixth ray, and that's really a double and powerful influence. You have, therefore, the influence of Mars dominating Italian and Roman history. He links the two, and of course one evolved from the other. And it is this Martian tendency which lay at the base of the German-Italian axis. Probably think about the soul sign of Germany. It is Aries. and it's powerfully on the sixth ray. And then when you look at Pisces, you will also find the sixth ray coming through powerfully in the personality, the Piscean personality of Germany. So this can be a very aggressive ray, and we know when we look at Mars, it may even, in the last analysis, have a monad on the first ray, which will add a power to that six-ray tendency. The monadic ray is not given because it's still a non-sacred planet. Okay, it, however, is not today the controlling factor, and he's basically telling us that the Roman addiction to conquest and world empire is no longer the controlling factor. What about the fifth ray? We have concrete knowledge or science via Venus. Now, the soul sign of Rome, the capital, is Venus with its with its fifth ray. So it's Taurus and Venus has a fifth ray soul. I believe the what's given for the rays of the sacred planets is their soul ray. So the influence is also dominant in Great Britain. It's dominant through Libra. It's dominant through the personality ruler of Great Britain, which is Taurus, ruled by Venus. So there are some lines of connection. And again, closely relates the two countries. And it's kind of interesting that one of the major places of Roman conquest was what we now call Great Britain, and maybe parts of Ireland as well. Of this, there is one curious little instance which demonstrates an almost uniform working of this scientific bent for good of the entire world, Venus in relation with Jupiter. Now, he's told us that so often scientific acumen is used to make weaponry, and it must change from that to making that which will be of real benefit to humanity. So this appears to be a tendency towards using the fifth ray for good, and this is the invention of the telephone by Alexander Graham Bell, and the development of the radio by Marconi. So one is from the United Kingdom and the other from Italy. And there's a lot here in these indirect influences which is relating those two countries particularly. Okay, and then, there'll be other relations too, via France and so forth. But for France, it's a major influence, being the soul ray of France. And here it's indirect. And finally, at least in what the Tibetan gives us, it's ray 1. And why would that be? It's through Vulcan, the hierarchical ruler of the soul sign, Taurus, the soul sign of the capital. Ray 1, willpower via Vulcan, the forger and the worker in metals. Vulcan has this unitive part to it, and it brings about relations of a very solid kind through forging those relations out of metal. And it's symbolic, of course. The forger and the worker in metals, whose influence in this case closely associates itself with the undeveloped aspect of the Leonian influence, and that would mean the impression of the will. Now, Leo is very strong as the soul ruler of the entire nation and strong as the sole ruler of the sun. And let's remember that Leo is a first ray sign along with the fifth ray. So naturally it can combine with Vulcan to bring a powerful first ray presence, and I think we saw that particularly in relation to Rome, and maybe in the attempt to reawaken the glory of the Roman Empire. Now, I think what's important with these kinds of analyses is that the method, and how we can apply that method in a more general sense. He says, in the above hints, you may find much that is explanatory. Now, he calls them hints, and much that will clarify British-Italian relations. The destinies of the two countries are closely allied, and together they can potently affect the German race and influence it towards a better adjustment to life and a wiser discrimination, which I think, it seems to be happening. It will require the backing of France when the soul of that country controls, and as I mentioned, the fifth ray soul. Okay, so now let's just call this the end of our little study of Italy, and obviously any one of these countries, many books on their culture and civilization have appeared and can justifiably appear. So this is the 26th of September 2020, and then we'll begin with something else when we next work in this way. The book, The Destiny of the Nations, is so filled with important information about right relations between the nations. We will definitely want to continue when we can looking at, we're not necessarily political workers, but we have to understand how these nations, getting along according to their better energies, can offer much to the soul of humanity. Okay, well, that maybe took a little longer than one would have hoped, but now let's think about our own connection with our own nation, because that ends up being very important constantly, especially in these times of stress. The nations themselves must be wisely guided, and so often they are very poorly guided, which is a great shame and dangerous. So the more that we as members of the new group of world servers actually or potentially can contribute to the emergence of the soul qualities of our nations, and of course bring forward our own soul qualities, the better off the wholeness will be. So let us bathe ourselves in the light of the soul and think about our egoic lotus filled with high qualities that have been garnered, have been accumulated really over millions of years. Now, it would be a very interesting thing to be able to have a reflection, to see what the Master sees when he looks at our causal body and the egoic lotus, basically. That would be the first step. And of course, he can do the same with the causal body of the particular nation. Some, of course, are relatively new and have not yet had a chance even to develop a strong mental focus. But that's coming. And when we look into our own situation, we know we are carrying virtues. And those virtues we radiate to those in our immediate vicinity, our near ones and those we work with. We know we also carry liabilities, but they are not so much of the soul. They are still deposited in the permanent atoms of the personality, and they have to be overcome. So what are some of these virtues that we find in our own egoic nature? Take a few moments to identify what they may be. We should really have a pretty good idea of the attributes that we are ready to present to our fellow countrymen and also to humanity as a whole. It's a third-ray method, you know, presented attributes, and each one of us has developed certain of these soul attributes so that they can be of an advantage to those whom we contact. The idea of virtue is a strength, and when we know what our contributions can be, and we present them, we offer them, we radiate them, it cannot help but build up the soul expression of our nation. And such expression together will build up the soul expression of humanity as a whole. So what is it our nation is trying to give? What is it that is the destiny of our nation to offer to the soul of humanity? And how much have we developed something in our own egoic lotus that will further the particular gift of our nation. Now, probably you will know the virtues of your nation better than people who don't live there. We can study what it's like to live in a nation, but we don't know with the same degree of intimacy what it's like for someone who really does live in that nation, is a true national in that country. So we have to take seriously the fact that we live not only unto ourselves, but that we are offering a wider type of consideration and have in our hearts and minds a wider and deeper responsibility to bring about the development of something that can help the wholeness of the soul of humanity. So we improve our own abilities, building our causal body. We help to build the soul of our nation, and thus we contribute to finally the emergence of the soul of humanity. And all this we're doing under the guidance of higher beings, maybe even what we might call the angelic nature of the nation, the solar angels of the nation as a whole. If it has a causal body, then the presence of a great solar angel will be there as well, and they all work in cooperation with each other. So every day, at least for a little while, we should remind ourselves, my qualities of contribution I am offering to the building of my nation and its greater fitness to contribute to the one soul of humanity, one soul expressing under many different aspects. And the mantram which expresses our oneness is often called the mantram of unification. It's so easy to perceive in a splintered manner, a separative manner, setting this nation against that, this person against that, dividing what should be unified. And that too is one of the problems with the planet Mars when it rules either the individual horoscope, as it does now for some prominent leaders, or when it is very prominent in the horoscope of the nation. It's a non-sacred and divisive planet, but its higher aspirational potentials can be cultivated. So let us say together the mantram of unification. Realizing that in the Aquarian age of universal love, this Martian vibration will be overcome, and the quality of Jupiter, inclusive and fusing, will take its place, a great second-ray quality through the esoteric ruler, and there will be the redemption of the personality nature for so many during the Aquarian age. The sons of men are one, and I am one with them. I seek to love, not hate. I seek to serve and not exact due service. I seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the love that underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate and outer cleavages be gone. Let love prevail. Let all men love. From fragmentation to unity, this is our goal in the Aquarian age. And that a great peace will prevail. Now it is predicted, of course. The scriptures tell us of the era of peace. It's in symbolic language when so-called Satan, representing the human personality, will be bound for 1,000 years. Obviously that's all symbolic language, but we can expect that after the Saturn experience in the first decanate of Aquarius, a more illumined and loving time under Mercury and Venus will appear. Meanwhile, all that we do internally is leading to the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the great Lord, the Christ, the Bodhisattva, the central Lord of the three great lords in hierarchy. And it's very much our duty to present a realistic image so that humanity can welcome the great Lord in a manner that is appropriate and not live subject to the glamorous fairy tales which dogmatic thought, rigid dogmatic thought, has produced. So, our responsibility is to the divine plan, to those whom the plan serves, and to those who serve the plan. Our responsibility is to cultivate our own causal bodies so we can serve more effectively, to cultivate the causal body of our nation so it can contribute more effectively, and finally to offer those kinds of qualities in our general living expression that will bring the soul of humanity into greater prominence. I'd like to close this little reflection with the invocation for peace, the first of the great invocations given in 1935-1936, and under the influence of peace and goodwill. And tomorrow our plan is to meditate for the financial resources that it takes to help bring forward the externalization and reappearance in the right way. That the hierarchy and even the Christ has the need of those resources so as to reach the needy sons of men, as it is said. So, great invocation number 1.